Hey, what up, YouTube? I am live a little early for you guys. I am going to uh, play you guys a little bit of music. 1 2 1 2. Check check check.
Welcome,
Hey,
welcome.
what up,
I gotta
YouTube?
turn
I
down
am
the
live a
stream.
little. Say hi when you get to the chat. I'm going to play you guys a little bit of music on the piano. Enjoy. Alrighty. All right, welcome, welcome. This is Early Squad. You are the Early Squad. Nicholas Chan, welcome back. What up, Mark? Thank you, thank you. Hope you guys enjoyed. Maybe I'll play another tune when we get a little bit closer to starting. Let's see if I got my camera all centered. Oh yeah, we good. We good. I have people on Twitter saying that the hoarders could be right. Gotta be fucking kidding me. Yeah, I like playing the bluesy stuff. Blues, a little bit of jazz. I'm not formally trained. I mean, I took some lessons when I was young, but not too many. Just to learn the basics of theory and stuff like that. So maybe I'll start incorporating more music into these streams. It'll kind of be like my what's it called, Mr. Rogers intro. It's a beautiful day in the Pangburn hood. A beautiful day to be Pangburn. uh, Yeah, we're going. This is part two of the watch party, guys. For those of you who don't know, our watch parties are review sessions of the events that have already occurred. And we go through them together, have interesting conversations. I'll take some calls if you guys are interested. We don't always have people interested in calling in, but that's all good if you're not. Just going to adjust my mic a little bit here. There we go. I should have done some vocal warm up. And once I get a better setup, I can actually sing a few tunes for you guys too. Yabba dabba doo. How are you guys doing? Nicholas Chan says, "Play us a jazz piece." I can't play a jazz piece. I'm not technical enough to be able to do that. I'm like a more improvisationalist, but like my voicings, like I don't know like jazz voicings and things like that. So I'm more of a like, hey, give me the chords to what you're playing, and I can jam along with it. I can do some reading, but not on the fly. Um, I can play boogie woogie like I was just playing, and blues and things like that, which is pretty easy, pretty standard. But I also play and sing a lot of uh, like a lot of like Elton John standards, and yeah, just basically anything I like singing, I'll learn to play it. I use the Ultimate Guitar app. It's really good. But I have a really good ear too, so if I hear something, I can figure it out pretty quickly. Oftentimes, I'll be able to just start playing along with it if I hear a song that I like. Sometimes I'll throw on like the blues channel on my TV or just some radio channel that's playing instrumental, and I'll just jam with it. It's fun. I love music. I think everyone should engage in some kind of music creation for sure in their life, or some form of artistic inspiration where you're actually creating art of some kind. Yeah, Rocket Man's a sweet song. I love Rocket Man. I especially love like when Elton is solo doing it and he does like a like 10-minute rendition where he's doing a lot of soloing and some interesting things with his vocals. Dan Stowe says, by the way, I'm having a little Pepsi and vodka right now, so this stream could get a little weird." Dan Stowe says, "What are we expected to hear tonight? We're going to be continuing our review, our watch party of the debate discussion that just took place in New York City on March 1st between Matt Dillahunty and Dinesh D'Souza. And you guys will have a chance to make your comments, and I will engage with them. Make sure you guys hit the like button on this stream so that we get some more people coming around. We're going to officially start at 7. So I came on a little bit early today just to play a little music and to hang out with you guys a little more informally, even though this channel is very informal. Got to fix my hair. It's bugging the shit out of me. Yeah. It's pretty hot in here too. My phone's been buzzing a lot. What's going on? What is going on in the hood? Because I'm drinking Pepsi, I'm going to be burping a little bit. Just FYI. Thank you for those of you who are showing up early. You get the brownie prize, which is my thanks. James Wright says, "I've watched most of the D'Souza versus All the Atheists." Yeah, he's an entertaining conversationalist, debater. Very skilled. If you guys aren't signed up yet, head over to thewarofideas.org. We're just beta testing that platform, and it's going to be going on for a while still. I've been speaking to app developers about creating a game based on what I call the War of Ideas. And yeah, I'm really excited about that. So it's kind of a game, a strategy game text-based strategy game that is based on um, uh, like good argumentation, avoiding avoiding logical fallacies because that will be points against you. So it's a point system game that I'm working on that is in app development right now, um, early stages. But it's this game I want to develop where the better you argue, the more points you collect, and then once you get enough points, you can buy awesome things with them. Virtual things and some real life things like being entered to win tickets to Pangburn live events and things like that. So there is incentive for people to be engaging in good argumentation. And obviously, we have the rules of logic, we have the rules of skepticism. We can lay those out and see how well people can follow those. And I think this game will yield better ideas um, in people's lives for sure. Tiago Rodriguez says, "This channel is a paradise for philosophy science introverts. Thanks for creating this." Of course, I'm glad you're here. Daniel C. says, "As an atheist, I don't agree with a lot of what Matt said in the debate." Awesome. Well, I look forward to hearing what you disagree with once it comes up with in Matt's performance here. Um, I'll talk about some things too. I have been pointing out the logical fallacies as they've come up. I think Matt has one slip up that I caught, and then Dinesh has a couple that we've discussed already. But I hope you guys are hanging in there with this pandemic thing. And again, um, let's see. Yeah, and I just tweeted out the coronavirus is not that bad, people. It's good to take action and precautions against the spread. Stop hoarding, stop panicking. That's what I've been kind of repeating to people. The hoarding and the panicking is something I fear a lot more than this virus, for sure. But it's good that we're taking precautions and yeah, and obviously things like this is the thing. Like if you don't have a really good plan about the economic impact of doing the absolute most you can think of to stop the spread of a virus, you have to take into consideration the detriment to your well-being as a society if you shut down everything. So right now I'm seeing like 500,000 Canadians have filed for EI this week, employment insurance. It's like how many of these businesses really have to be shut down if we're not overreacting, um, and how smart was the way that we rolled out all of these recommendations. I think we're going to learn a lot from this one in particular. Um, this one seems to have sparked a mass amount of panic. Not even as much. There wasn't as much panic with like the swine flu, as far as I'm concerned, and I think the swine flu is a worse epidemic. So I think in the end, the swine flu will prove to be deadlier than the coronavirus. Um, but we'll see. Yeah, it's like it's a evolving thing. It's just as things evolve with this thing, you can't throw skepticism and logic out the window. Those still have to be at the forefront. We don't want people panicking. We don't want world leaders panicking and unnecessarily closing down too many services because of fear that is based on something that there is a small possibility of occurring. We still need to base our actions on plausibilities. And there are ways to calculate these decisions before we lose our shit. Um, let's see. Dan Stowe says, haven't watched D'Souza debate before. What do you think of him? I think Dinesh is incredibly smart, highly intelligent. Obviously, him and I disagree on virtually everything when it comes to like. Dinesh thinks faith is this reasonable position to have, and I think faith is not reasonable in any sense. Faith is the excuse you give when you have no good reason to believe something. And me and Matt agree on that for sure. But yeah, so Dinesh and I disagree on a lot of that. And then I also disagree with a lot of, not a lot, but some of the rhetoric that comes out of Dinesh's work about, pinning parts of history on certain demographics of society, and I think it's a little bit disingenuous how he paints the Democratic Party, for instance, as this root of evil in his work. Um, but he's a very political guy. Um, so we disagree on some things, but I think in general, Dinesh is a good thinker in general. Not that he doesn't get some things wrong, but I think he's a very smart guy, interesting debater, and a good thinker. Um, Dan Stowe says, as a microbiologist in the UK, I wouldn't say it's not that bad. What we do to stop the spread of virus and how the healthcare system handles this will determine whether or not it's a crisis. Yeah, well, you can say that about anything, right? You can say that about, so you should say that same thing about influenza, right? But you wouldn't be, if this wasn't going on, you wouldn't be coming out and saying that about influenza, right? Uh, it's a new virus, sure. Um, as far as I can tell, based on the evidence, not as deadly as influenza, and I think that's going to just become more apparent as we realize that there are probably millions of cases that haven't even been documented in and out of the system so quickly with very few negative responses biologically. So we'll see. I could be wrong. Maybe it's going to be on par with influenza. But as far as it's looking right now, it's less deadly. This is a good time to remind everyone to get their flu shot because the spread of influenza leads to many more deaths, right? And that's not like a whataboutism. It's just a good opportunity when we're talking about viruses that spread to say there is a reason why the flu shot was developed, people. It's not like the flu shot wasn't developed because, oh, the flu is just a minor inconvenience. No, the flu kills hundreds of thousands of people every year. So get your flu shot. It's about trying to stop the spread of that thing because the flu spreads incredibly fast as well. Um, Daniel C says it's a cliche, but we can't find any toilet paper in the stores. Yeah, fucking idiots hoarding toilet paper. Stop hoarding, people. Stop hoarding. Hoarding is a greedy man's game. It's just don't do it. Think about the people when you're out there hoarding. Think about the people that aren't as quick as you to get there. Like, what do you think of them? Like, oh, they should have been here quicker. Is that the way you really think? Is that the way you think people should be acting in civilized society? I don't. Dan Stowe says, I think the coronavirus has already infected more people worldwide and killed more people worldwide than the swine flu. No? What are you reading? Here's the world. I'm going to give you the actual data here. The coronavirus has only killed 11,000 people. Okay? So here's the actual data. Kevin Chaos, welcome back. Um, yeah, so it looks like 2019, about 34,000 killed. Let's see. Yeah, so about anywhere up to about 61,000 deaths annually since 2010. Oh, the WHO, World Health Organization, estimates that the flu kills 290,000 to 650,000 per year. That's from the WHO. So even at the lowest denomination, 290,000 flu kills per year. We're at 11,000 with this, and I mean, with how long it had an opportunity to fuck around in China, and they only, how many deaths does China have? Let's see, 3,255 deaths in China. Like that's pretty extraordinarily poor. As if we're going to put this on the deadly scale, as a deadly virus, it's like it's not very deadly. And then Italy is an anomaly, and I think it has to do with so many of the elderly folks there, and also how ill prepared their particular healthcare system was with this. But we're seeing in places in general, quite most countries are prepared enough, and they really, the percentage of how this virus is doing as far as death toll is just, it's not doing very well if we're to rate it on its the amount of deaths. Um, let's see. Joseph DeHaan says Dinesh is actually very dangerous. He may have good skill set for debates or convincing people of harmful ideas. This does not make him intelligent. To be honest, I'm not sure what intelligence is. Well, intelligence, we just measure IQ. Intelligence is IQ score, computability. So hardware computability, which essentially does mean nothing until it can be applied, right? So if you have someone that has an IQ of 260, say, but they're in such a vegetative state that they can't do anything, like socially, it's like, what? It doesn't really mean anything except that number in the IQ scale. So obviously we need to, in history, we've had some extraordinary people that haven't been so affected by the social detriments of having a really high IQ generally, like Albert Einstein. Even though he wasn't the most social person, it's like, but he still had a balance enough to be able to apply his really high IQ. Um, Starvish our koala says, either way, thank you for the channel. Really brings a beautiful community feel that's lacking otherwise. Herding cats isn't easy. I agree. And someone mentioned last time when we had a big audience for the last watch party. They're like, "Oh, this channel's way better when we have like only 30 to 40 people in the room watching," because they felt like there wasn't as much like just shit flinging between people. The conversations were more intriguing, and that's going to be true about any platform. It's like the more people you throw in there, the more trolls you're going to get. The more like, so eventually, like, I do weed those people out. Like if I see people engaging in bad faith argumentation, I'll give them some chances, and then if they're just like constantly spewing nonsense, they're going to get booted. And they can email and have a chance to come back and get unbooted, but or create a new YouTube account, which takes like 5 seconds. Um, Make sure you guys hit the like button on this stream. Tiago Rodriguez says, could used to say that intelligence is like soil quality. It doesn't really mean anything precise because the soil can do many things. Yeah, that's kind of a good analogy. I like the soil analogy. It's cool. If you guys aren't following me on Twitter yet, follow me at the Pangburn. I'm on Twitter. I don't have many Twitter followers. Most Pangburn followers are on YouTube or Facebook. Facebook, we have a lot, really active channel. It hasn't been very active for the past 25 days because, like, I'm still able to post on the page, but there's been this thing where they said you're kind of on a probation period, and like I'll post a meme or something, and only like 250 people out of our 60 or 80,000 or whatever we have followers see it. So I think, and that's supposed to be lifted by March 25th. So that's next week. So we'll see what happens. But obviously, one of my posts or another admin's post pissed someone off for sure. Um, Daniel C says the comments move too fast in large chats. It's true. It's the live chat thing that does make it hard. Uh, Joseph Dehan says, we do not actually know how many people have died of the coronavirus. We know how many people who have died and were diagnosed with the virus. We actually do have a count of how many people have died from the virus. We do know that. And again, I'm going to post this link. This is the World Health organizations in general have been really good about reporting this data clearly, and the health organizations have been really good at communicating necessary steps to take. What hasn't been really good is obviously the mainstream media, but you get what you get with that crap. And also, the thing I've been most shocked about is our public intellectuals and our public thinkers, how they've been using rhetoric and stuff that makes it seem scarier than it actually is. And that's why I call it fear mongering. Don't do that. Just post the information, and you can interpret the information, but don't like let your emotionality and emotional connection to what is a possibility of what a virus can become or whatever take over what's plausible. It's like we have so many people spreading unnecessary fear and panic, and it's a piss off. Joseph Dehan says, if IQ is a measure of intelligence, have people in the world been getting more intelligent every year? Yes. Intelligence does, based on the information I've seen, intelligence does gradually go up as we move through the years, but really microscopic amounts. Like, obviously, you're going to see a big change in human, well, not a big change, but a micro change, which you might see a couple points, or maybe between 1 and 5 points in a 10,000 year stretch. Um, I don't have the information in front of me, but someone can look it up if they want. But when we're talking about things like that evolving, it's going to take time for sure. Daniel C says, watch the CDC stuff, not the evening news. Yes, I had to tell some of my family members to turn off the goddamn news because they were talking to me about, well, this is what they said on the news. Sarvesh Arkawala says, not to be insensitive, but I can't wait for the time we start discussing the change in community consciousness brought on by the coronavirus. I think it's going to change some things for sure. I think some businesses are going to realize that, oh, okay, we don't necessarily have to have people in the office 5 days a week if you're a full-time worker. Maybe you do 2 days a week and break it up and help people save on gas and transport and just improve people's quality of life quite a bit if you're allowing them to wake up when they feel like waking up most days of the week and getting their work done on their own time. And I think there's a lot of evolution that can happen out of things like this, and there will be definitely some interesting things to discuss. Joseph Dehan says, is everyone who has died recently been tested for coronavirus? The problem is we do not really have much good information. No, whenever someone dies, they're given a full diagnosis as to why they die. That includes testing their blood for poisons and viruses and everything. So again, the world is clocking this very carefully. Again, 11,398 deaths recorded. Out of, and they're only saying that we've documented 275,000 cases. I suspect that at least bare minimum 1 million people, so 4 times that, have had this virus. But it's probably like 8 times that. It's one of these things that, and then obviously that really changes the number of what the death rate of this thing actually is. So. Yeah. Okay, we are at 7 p.m., guys. Let's see. I'm going to shoot this link just to a couple more platforms, and then we'll get going. I'm not sure what our audience is going to be like tonight. Obviously, it's going to be looks like it's going to be a lot lighter than last show. Last show we had like 160, 170 in the room. So we'll see. We'll take a look once we get going here. I am live. Join us for the watch party at Dillahunty. Dillahunty versus at Dinesh D'Souza. Cool. I'll post that there. I'm going to quickly post it on Facebook, guys, and then we will get going. But yeah, like you don't see it's funny that you don't see this kind of alarmism being used with influenza. Like, just look at the stats on how many influenza kills every year, and it's not a whataboutism. People confuse this. It's just it's worth looking at those two viruses, even though they're different things. It's people like it's comparing apples to oranges. It's like, no, it's not. They're both viruses, dum-dum. And people like to say this. This is a platitude that's going around. We don't know what this thing can become. It's like, come on, you guys. You can say that about fucking anything. Like, everyone needs to chill the fuck out and stop hoarding and panicking. Okay, we are posted. Stay on this page. I'm going to leave this chart open in case anyone has any questions about these stats. Again, I posted the worldometers.info/coronavirus link just so you guys can actually see the actual stats of what's going on. Okay, cool. I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this. And then I am your guys's. Okay, welcome, guys. Should we, I think we're just going to dive right into it and get going. Thank you. Make sure you guys hit the thumbs up button. I'm sure more people will filter in as we get going. But enjoy. Let's continue the debate.
And you'll be right.
And these are the same, by the way, these are the same climate scientists who told us, the same climate scientists who told us in the 70s and 80s that the Earth was cooling. Yes.
The same guys in the 70s?
Well, I mean, it's...
Are they like 84 now?
Well, okay, fair enough.
All right.
Fair enough. So you're telling me now that even though we're measuring the same duration, i.e. not 1980 to now, but let's just take, for example, the Earth from 1900 to 1980. You're telling me that there's a whole group of scientists at top universities. There's a book by Lowell Ponty in the 70s called The Cooling. All the apocalyptic rhetoric of today is duplicated in that book with the sole exception that the Earth is cooling. It's not getting hotter, it's getting colder. Global cooling. In fact, I think this is the root of the substitutionary phrase climate change, because the climate somewhere, in some way, is always changing. But the point is this, that all these measurements from 1980 going back the previous 80 years show a cooling trend. So you're telling me that they were wrong, and the new guys coming in...
I'm not telling you anything.
Well, I'm just saying that you're accepting now that a new bunch of guys will come in measuring the same phenomenon, right? Maybe using better instruments.
That's how science gets better, yeah.
Yes, but it gets better by and large by greater precision. Not by basically saying that up is down and down is up.
Sure, but if you find, so there's, and I have no specific expertise, hey fly, in this particular, the thing is,
There's a fly flying around Matt. Flies are attracted to shit, Matt. No, I'm kidding.
This is science got it wrong before, so it likely has it wrong again, which is a fallacy in itself. Because the fact that the only thing in the entire...
let's probe that fallacy. Why is it a fallacy?
Because the past doesn't necessitate the future.
Right.
And the fact that we discovered that science was wrong about something doesn't mean that our new discovery is wrong or as likely to be wrong or anything in the neighborhood. Science is the single most consistently reliable method for accurately understanding the world.
The natural world.
And the only thing that has ever come...
So Dinesh just said the natural world, as though maybe he's proposing there's anything else outside the natural world. Let's see if that comes up again here.
Along to correct a flawed finding in science is more and better science, not religion, not hypocrisy, not what's
Well,
the
wait a
market
minute,
doing.
but that's silly because that's okay. That would be like me saying science is greater than philosophy because scientific findings are cumulative and they have gotten more precise and accurate about the natural world, whereas in philosophy we haven't advanced all that far past Plato.
Okay, I'll buy that.
You'll buy that?
So, philosophy, which I love, I'm a philosophy geek, especially when it comes to epistemology. But I don't think what have we done on epistemology since, I'll just stick with Hume. Once you have the foundations of thought, there's not much left to explore there. Once you have identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, once you have the foundations of a syllogism, once you have the foundations of set theory and Venn diagram, and you've got your epistemology, now that's when science can say, now we can tell when we're justified in accepting something and when we're not, and to what extent. And so science then does this inferential testing to build a model that is our best example of the universe, and it is tentative and subject to revision. That's what science doesn't make proclamations about truth.
Yeah, but I think
But scientists do. So if there's a climate scientist out there that says, the truth is this.
Jordan Vargas just made a good point here at the Pangburn. If there is anything outside the natural world, wouldn't it immediately be considered natural as soon as we know about it? Yes. Yeah. That's why anyone who explains that or anyone that says, it's like supernatural. It's like, okay, describe what the supernatural is. They say, outside of the natural. Well, how do you know it's outside of the natural? Like as soon as you discover something or detect something, if it's detectable, it's testable. So you can build a model around what you detected. And then if you don't get any other information, sometimes it'll be like, well, we can't explain what we detected, but we have the evidence that we detected it. And a lot of this can be applied to like quantum theory and quantum physics and quantum fluctuations and things like that. It's like until we have done some level of observation, you're not, some people might look at that and be like, that sounds like it's like we're dabbing into the supernatural, man. It's like, no, we're just learning about this new thing that we've been able to detect based on new instruments.
That's not science. That's preaching on behalf of science. What they should be saying is the data show this, here's the model, this is the extrapolation of this model, this is our best understanding and best estimate.
So Dinesh understands all this, and Dinesh isn't really anti-scientific in the sense that he's a denier of evolution or anything like that. Dinesh is proposing a supernatural being outside of the natural. So Matt's doing a whole download of stuff. I think Dinesh is probably like, yeah, I know all this, but
what's going to happen in the future, so that they're making decisions like I am about my future based on actual data and not what we and not just what we hope happens.
Well, I think it was Wittgenstein who said that even if all possible scientific questions could be solved, the most important human questions would still be on the table. Now, the importance of that is this. I think
So I disagree with Dinesh because I think the question of what actually is, what is true, and we use science to determine this. That's actually the most important question to me. That is the most important question to me. So I disagree with Dinesh.
Awarding a sort of prize to science based upon a stacked deck. You're defining scientific truth as somehow superior, and you're declaring that on that basis, arguing inside the bubble of science comes out first prize. And according to you, philosophy, because
I would say it does get first prize because we are able to improve human well-being by such a huge margin because of the scientific method.
It's dealing with enduring human, you may say, eternal questions like what is good, what is right, how do you tell right from wrong, not to mention questions like how do we know what we know.
That's the one I went with.
Yeah,
the foundation.
or to pursue, here's Immanuel Kant. You asked who went past Hume. I would say Kant did. You ask questions like, when I look at something in space,
Okay.
is the space in the world, or is the space a mode of my perception? Is time something out there in the world? Just think about it. Time is this thing, this object with no weight,
Time isn't an object.
well,
Time is an abstraction.
is an abstraction. And abstractions, by and large, live in our mind.
Yes.
So Kant's point is that space and time are dimensions of they are things that the mind brings to experience. They are not something out there in the world. Now, I'm not.
What is Dinesh talking about? We can measure. Time is just basically just the way we've determined how we measure as processes move forward.
I'm not trying to resolve that issue.
Descriptive.
Okay, I don't think either of us is going to top Kant on this one in the next
I can.
30 seconds. All I'm trying to say is that to argue that this kind of a question is somehow either settled or unimportant because there is no way of sort of addressing it in a scientific sense, I think reflects a certain narrowness of perspective about the wide range of human knowledge, the wide range of disciplines,
And
from
that would be
history
true
to psychology.
If I had said anything remotely like that, but I didn't.
Well, you gave a little kind of science comes first, and that's what I was responding
Science is the most consistently reliable method of accurately understanding the universe, the cosmos.
Not the,
Joseph Dehan says, to date, the death rate from coronavirus in China was 1.4%. No. We don't have that death rate because we don't know how many people actually had the virus. Don't confuse death rates when it comes to the coronavirus. We don't know what that percentage is. Okay? It's a constant mistake.
The natural world.
The natural world, perfect, exact. But we live in a world where we are in a natural world to be sure, right? But we are anomalous objects in that natural world, right? First of all, we are conscious of our own existence. We are conscious that here we are in the world observing the world.
Okay.
That makes us different from most of the world. True?
Yeah,
Okay.
as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and as far as we can tell, even in the living world and in the animal kingdom, we are anomalous in that we not only have consciousness, but we have self-consciousness. True?
Some of us.
Okay. Okay, and to push it further, coming back a little bit to Kant here as well, Kant says, I'm amazed by the starry heavens, and then I'm equally amazed by the moral law within me. So now we come to another thing which is worth mentioning, which is, well, Adam Smith's phrase for it was the impartial spectator, which is, to quote Adam Smith, there is this man within the breast, sort of another guy, as Smith envisioned him, inside of us that is clearly not us, because this guy, let's call him a guy, is a bit of a nuisance. This guy...
How did we reach the conclusion that it's not us? First of all, I'm not going to concede that
here's
there's
why.
a man in here or that he's not me.
Well, no, but the only point I'm trying to make in a roundabout way is that as humans, we are inherently moral beings. Morality is part of the equipment of being human, and in fact, it's a necessary part. In our criminal law, for example, if somebody is considered not to know the difference between right and wrong, we don't even hold them accountable for their actions. Which is to say, we consider morality...
That's not true.
That's not true?
Yeah.
If somebody, let's say,
still
for
hold them
example, some guy
accountable.
is...
Like, we still hold them accountable. I think this is where Matt's going to go. Like, if someone who doesn't know right from wrong kills 20 children, we still hold that being accountable for that, but we say, that we know the reasons why they did it. This is one of the reasons. They just don't know right from wrong.
so insane that he thinks he's Napoleon, and he goes out and kills somebody else.
We still hold them responsible for their actions. We just have graduated to a point where we are killing fewer people who are of diminished mental capacity, thankfully.
Yeah.
But we are also committing people to institutions for their own benefits. But it's not like you just walk in and say, blameless.
Well, John Hinckley was in an institution for shooting the President of the United States, and he's out. So he was.
Is he better? Has he shot anybody else?
He hasn't shot anybody else, but my point is he was held not responsible for that act in a criminal sense.
That is a technical definition within the law. He was still held responsible.
No, okay,
it's not
but
like we let him get away with it.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is if somebody has no moral
What is Dinesh getting at here? Let's hear.
comprehension whatsoever, we basically call them a psychopath or a sociopath. And all I'm trying to say is that that's a way of saying that you are outside the human community because the normal moral equipment that the rest of us have that comes into play.
So just for clarity, you're suggesting that those individuals, and I would stay away from diagnostic terms normally, but psychopaths, sociopaths, they don't have that inner man.
I'm saying if society makes a determination that someone is, in a sense, a psychopath or a sociopath, they are considered, in a sense, outside the normal moral community of human beings, not accountable to the same.
So for clarity, we start off with this, we all have this, and now we've identified a group of people who don't have it.
And I'm saying that those people who don't have it, or at least have somehow, I'm not saying they weren't born with it. I'm saying I agree. I do think that our moral equipment, like our other equipment, can be damaged. It can be destroyed. It can be squelched. It can be brutalized. So yeah, let's assume that there's somebody who's gone through whatever experiences that have caused them to be morally anesthetized.
Okay.
And so, for example, they could bring in a little dog right here and joyfully stomp on it as the audience gasps in horror. Or if you want a more mixed reaction, a cat.
The thing about that comment is that Matt has cats, and Matt is a stout cat lover. Like, just loves cats. Like, Matt's reaction here.
The point I'm trying to make, however, is
Sorry, Beth.
the point I'm trying to make is just this: that we, in trying to understand the cosmos, we don't just understand the physical world, which is the domain of science. I agree.
Sure.
But I'm saying we have to understand ourselves.
I couldn't agree more that we should understand ourselves, and I think that one of the biggest problems is that there are a number of assumptions. The biggest problem humans make is probably asking the wrong questions, like, what's the purpose of my life? As if it was externally imposed and extant as a real thing that you could discover, rather than I make my own meaning and purpose in life. But when we're talking about this moral being, I would presume...
Wait, I mean, you just made an absolutely ridiculous statement, so I
good.
have to pause a little bit here because I'm sort of
That's fine,
grasping
you make
this.
a ridiculous statement,
Well,
and I'll be
according
able
to
to do
you-
the same thing, yeah.
According to you, we don't have a life purpose. I mean, let's think about it. First of all, almost all of us are, in some sense, trying to discover what the purpose of our life is, right? And there are huge industries.
I don't think people live that way. I don't think people are trying to discover what the purpose of their life is. I think people are just living life, and obviously I think we're just pleasure-driven beings, just moving from epitome of pleasure to epitome of pleasure, and go and kind of moving towards utopia. I don't think there's this overwhelming search for a purpose. I think that's a very archaic way of thinking about humanity. It's a very religious way of thinking about humanity.
Devoted to this, there are talk shows devoted to this. It's a quest that just about all of us, probably most of us in the audience, are on. And you're declaring at the outset that it is a quest, according to you, that has no answer, or at least has no external answer.
No, it is a quest that I don't see any reason to think that there is an externally imposed purpose. The fact that you might desire there to be a God, a divine, or a universe-imposed purpose doesn't mean there is one. The fact that humans quest for things doesn't mean that the answer is there, or doesn't mean that the answer they hope for is there.
Of course not. So no one is saying that the...
So what did Dinesh say? Like, he said Matt just made a ridiculous statement. I didn't catch what Dinesh actually thought was so ridiculous.
The wish to have a purpose is enough. No, I'm not even saying that the universe is somehow...
What is our purpose?
Well, I would...
I have an answer for that. Just the general purpose of human beings in their life is pleasure. That's the best way I can describe it. If I need to give a really simple explanation, it's just pleasure pursuits. That's what we're doing, and that applies to the serial killer who wants to kill children, and it applies to the do-good person who sacrifices everything they have to save people's lives and save children from starvation.
I would say this, that I think in life, we are always asking this question. Am I, Dinesh, living the best life that I can live? In other words, is the life I'm living now somehow off track, inauthentic? Is there, when I say something, there's me saying it, but is there a better me that would have said something different? In other words,
I agree.
Okay, so in other words, my quest to find not only the choices I make, but the choices I ought to make is completely valid. True?
So there's a contextual thing. This is where we got with the labels and how we end up looking at this.
Yeah.
My view is that my life has whatever meaning and purpose I give it.
Okay.
The notion that I should be.
Jordan Vargas says, Pangburn, why pleasure pursuit and not reduction of anxiety? Because that pleasure pursuit is reduction of anxiety. That still applies. It will become pleasurable for someone who's being killed by their own anxiousness to pursue less anxiousness. That's a pleasurable pursuit in itself. Definitely. Diego Rodriguez says, Travis, I think more accurate than pleasure would be well-being. No, I don't think that's the case, because we find things pleasurable that we pursue at certain stages. Like, for instance, if you're suicidal, the epitome of pleasure eventually becomes death, and you carry that out if you succeed, because that becomes the epitome of pleasure for you, to die. This is what my first book is about, guys, for those of you who don't know. And as far as the well-being point, Diego Rodriguez, obviously to die in that sense would be antithesis to what would be considered good well-being for that human. But it's still a pleasurable pursuit. So that's why I think the pleasure drive is the best way to describe the human experience and what life is about generally across the board for human beings. But it's true that my foundation, my worldview foundation, is based in skepticism and maximizing well-being. That's a great moral groundwork, and I think Sam Harris has done excellent work with mapping this out when it comes to morality. So I think pursuing well-being, maximizing well-being as a society is a good thing. But I think as far as the meaning of life, if we need to describe it in simple terms, I think we can say pleasure.
Looking for some externally imposed purpose is not only do I not have a good reason to think that there is.
Thinking Sapien says, good explanation. Sarvish Arkawala says, Matt was very patient with Peterson. Peterson was at times very condescending, and at times seemed like Matt was actually getting through to him. Did Matt break Peterson? I think what I will say is that I've never seen Jordan in that state before of how he was after that conversation with Matt. But I think it definitely sharpened Jordan for his conversation that was to be coming with Sam Harris, definitely. So I think it was very interesting. Jordan Vargas says, I don't think it's the same thing. -5 times -5 equals 25, and 5 times 5 equals 25. Are you ending up with the same result, but it's not the same process? Well, I'm not saying it's the same process. I'm saying that the pleasure drive can lead us to all kinds of things. Like think of what human beings do. Essentially, everything we do is coming from our pleasure drive, because we wouldn't do it if we didn't find it pleasurable. And pleasurable in the sense of, sure, that can get perverted when it comes to the well-being standpoint, because someone could say, well, I find it very pleasurable for someone to hire a hooker to hit me in the back with cat o' nine tails 1,000 times until I bleed to death, because it's just so damn pleasurable. And things like smoking and doing heroin, and getting addicted to drugs. It's like, and these again morph those even take away our cognitive abilities and even have us become more pleasure driven in the short term. So there is a difference between long-term investment in the pleasure drive and short-term investment, for sure. A drug addict becomes very short-term investment, but someone can find immense pleasure in their life working towards their retirement, which is sometimes a very long ways away. But that constant pleasure pursuit is it's good for them. And the world breaks into two groups, as far as I'm concerned, and this is the argument I make. There are pleasure junkies and pleasure moderates. There's two kinds of humans. Pleasure junkies are the ones that need constant change up. They need to change up, try different foods, all these things. The pleasure moderate is the one who can go to the same bagel shop every morning and find that to be a pleasurable pursuit still. Jordan Vargas says, I think you're using pleasure too loosely, but I'll read your book. We'll see. Well, yeah. We'll see what you think.
Such a purpose, or that there would be or could be.
And you're saying, but whatever answer you give to that question of let's take, what is the purpose of Matt's life? And you're saying whatever answer you give is valid.
Yes, because if in fact there is some God who has a purpose for my life, I don't care what he thinks the purpose of my life should be. My life is mine.
Okay, let's explore that. Let's just say that you were to come here and announce to this audience, the purpose of my life, Matt, is to, and I realize this is a difficult example, I was going to say to count the hairs on my head. This doesn't really work in your case.
There are hairs here on my head.
Right, there you go.
This is my head.
There you go. Okay, but you said, that's what I live for. Every day I wake up and I spend a few hours a day, at least at the time I'm not working or eating, counting the hairs on my beard.
Yeah.
Right?
Joseph DeHaan says, maybe the word pleasure is too weighted. I'm not saying you are wrong. Yeah, and that's why I use the term pleasure drive. It's a term in itself. I don't just use the term pleasure unless I'm giving a blanket term about what the meaning of life is, and then I explain it with the pleasure drive. But perhaps when someone asks what the meaning of life is, I should start saying pleasure drive.
Now, I would submit that everybody here,
Thinking Sapiens
say,
says, you nailed it, Pangburn.
You know
this
what?
Is very
I don't think you're living your best life, pal. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing, but it's kind of pointless.
Can you show that this isn't the purpose of my life? That there is some other purpose?
Well, yes, I would. I mean, I think I could make arguments to that effect.
Okay.
Let's pursue the example even further, make it more ridiculous so we can see how obvious it is. Let's just say, for example, and I don't mean to be going into the trans territory, but I'm going to go there a little bit.
Here we go, folks.
Let's say I were to say, I identify as a toad.
Okay.
Okay? And so what I do is I get up in the morning and I start jumping around like a toad. And for a while, people go, hey, that guy's an eccentric, man. What the hell is he doing? And then I go, listen, it's not just up to me. I'm getting a little annoyed that there are all these haters out there who don't respect my identity as a toad. Disney won't cast me in toad races in their movies. I'm denied rights under the Constitution. All these people look down on me and make jokes when I come, jumping by, okay? So, and my point is not that I've decided to become a toad. My point is I've always been a toad. I'm just a toad in a human body. Okay, now, and I seriously press this. You would come to me, I think, and say, Dinesh, you are a member of Homo sapiens. You're not actually a toad. This purpose of your life that you have ascribed to yourself is based on some deep psychological disorders. You have very poor self-perception of who you are as a human being. And who you are as a human being is you're a son, you're a brother, you're a graduate of an Ivy League college, and you...
Yeah, this is a false equivalency fallacy. It's a long one. But there's also a point that I think is valid just in the essence of what Dinesh is getting at. It's like we do need to be okay that if someone gets into this toad state, to go up to them and say like I know this toad thing is big for you, but I don't want to see you like we do this with family members, right? If we see a family member engaging with something that's like, not like if they just could have a little bit of outside perspective and someone give them a helping hand to be like, you know what, like I know you've been going at this for a while and I know you're really passionate about this, but are you sure this is like the right thing for you, like being a toad and doing the toad thing? Like I get that it seems like in society it's become too taboo to have those sit down questions with someone, like if it's gone too far. And I'm not saying, and I agree that this is a false equivalency to the trans issue. He shouldn't have started it with I didn't want to move into the trans issue. He should have just started with his toad analogy. So let's see where else this goes.
Make movies, go do those things and find a higher purpose in life than jumping around in a dirty pond.
You think that's what I would come to you and say?
I hope so.
I don't think Matt would say it in that way. But I think what you could say is that if you're into this toad thing, I think moderation's good. Like just like a better analogy to this, it's not the trans analogy. It's actually the analogy of like I think Dinesh is saying what Dinesh should have said here is that if it becomes too excessive, the toad thing, and you think that it's kind of hurting your friend and they need to dial it back a bit. It's like you don't have to get rid of the whole toadism altogether if it's really what someone enjoys. But yeah, so I think Dinesh failed here with this first using this as an analogy, and not prescribing or dealing with his toad friend in the right way. Like they're passionate about this thing. Is it really harming anyone else? And Matt gets into this a bit, so I'll just let this finish.
Unless you, I hope so. You may.
No.
You might come back. You might come join me.
Because first of all, I'm not a busybody who worries about what other people do and how they feel and what their views
Well,
are.
it's not.
But
it's not you're not being a busybody to I mean, Matt did use the term worry. I don't think worry is justified anywhere, honestly. I think worry is just a terrible thing. I always tell everyone to replace worry in their life, all of their worry in their life, with care. And it's easier said than done, but I think worry just leads to anxiety, stress, panic. But replace that with care, and care leads to like action and good things like kind of more calculations of how we can make this better. I think that's better than worry. But we can still comment and talk about how people are living their lives and whether they ought to be living them that way, for sure.
Also,
but that's not.
But also, I try to avoid fallacious arguments. And in fact, you are a Homo sapien, but Homo sapiens include multiple different genders. And the fact that someone's gender identity doesn't match what you think it should be is none of your damn business.
Well, hold on. Okay, so right up to this point, you've been invoking science, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly, science is trumped by psychology.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, because
Science is psychology. Psychology is building scientific models.
according to you, now your gender is not a fact in the natural world.
Correct.
Your gender.
Your genetic sex and what your chromosomes are, those are facts, but your gender is a social construct. This is the difference between, let's say, someone who's genetically male and someone who's genetically female. Okay. Someone who has XX or XY chromosomes. And
Diego Rodriguez says, but Homo sapiens don't have toad brains, and female male human brains are impossible for precisely distinguish. Sarvesh Arakawala says, Jordan, right, yes, with more mental capacity, beings develop more needs. Example, a cat purring, social bonding, and many animals. Joseph DeHaan says, if you think you are a toad, it is a mental problem. Yeah, like if you Well, yeah, there's a difference of playing Toad and actually believing you are a Toad. True. Jordan Vargas says studies found that trans people had similar brain structure to those of the gender they identify as. Of course, that would be the case. Although we don't know if their behavior affected the brain structure and development or vice versa. Uh, and then Joseph says psychology is not the best of the sciences, though. Sure, I mean, you're still building scientific models, but just like, you know, quantum physics or particle physics, it's like a lot of it's based on just probabilistic math, right? Some people say that it's not very good science either, but it's still science. But Dinesh was like, you're replacing science with psychology. That was a bit weird. Let's keep rocking. We're getting through this, guys.
By the way, there are more than 2 of those because there's all sorts of chromosomal abnormalities. There are intersex people. The number of people who are born intersexed every year would shock most people because they just don't think that this sort of thing happens. However, that is about what your chromosomes are, what genetic predisposition you have, but it doesn't talk about what your state of mind is, what sort of self-perception you have. And so in addition to genetic sex, we also have gender, which actually falls into a number of different categories. So my apologies to all of my trans friends for the things that I'm about to get slightly wrong. There's a difference between gender identity and gender expression. And the gender identity is the gender that you associate with. But the reason I say these are social constructs is because what is a man? What makes a man a manly man? Well, you have the machismo aspect of the brawny and blah, but is someone who is weaker and more effeminate somehow less of a man? This is why this is a social construct, because it has to do with what roles we as a society put on it, which is why 150 years ago, pink was for boys and blue was for girls.
Well, this is why apes have classifications like alpha male, beta male, hybrid.
Girls, and now it has reversed, although I would go with black for everybody. But the thing is, at the end of the day, what I would say to you, if you were hopping around like a frog, is I would ask you how you're doing. I would ask you how you feel. And if you're able to communicate to me that you identify as a frog, I'm not going to be running around saying, oh my gosh, let me fix this. It's when there's a demonstration that what you're doing may be something that society should care about, that is going to result in some sort of self-harm or a problem for your life. In other words, I'm okay with living and let living, but as long as my trans friends are committing suicide at an inordinate rate and are being murdered left and right because there are bigots who think that whatever your chromosomes are or whatever particular genitalia you might have dangling is the one thing that matters, as long as a friend of mine...
Can someone fact check just to see what the... I know, let's put one of you guys on it, or let's see what we can come up with. What the number is for, hate crimes towards, hate killings towards trans people. Because Matt just made quite a big claim there.
Well, not an actual friend of mine, but someone in Puerto Rico the other night was murdered for using the bathroom that they associate with, when bathrooms are for peeing and pooping and hopefully washing your hands when you're done.
Bathrooms can also be used for sexual intercourse.
What people are doing to try to suggest that you can't be who you are is absolutely repugnant, and it is busybody. There's nothing anti-science about this. It is psychology. And even if we were to say, and I'm not saying this, so before, I'm saying this because this comes up. Even if you were to say, this is all gender dysphoria and it's mental illness and these people aren't what they think they are, what science has to say so far, based on what we've explored and discovered within these individuals, is that being supportive, encouraging, and allowing them to transition is the single best path to them living the life they want to live and surviving And until that changes, I will absolutely support what the data show is the best way to encourage trans people.
So what I think you've done here is change the topic.
I think
Thank you guys as well.
Sorry, guys. I just jumped here.
What is a
Sorry.
Hold on, gender is a social
like a tier A, tier B, tier C?
traumatized by the very fact that their own body does
Sorry,
not
guys.
agree with.
I'll softball it because you wouldn't even know. What, you don't know what my junk is? I don't have any evidence to show that anybody is in danger. Like a tier A, tier
Biological fact.
encouraging and allowing them to transition is the single best path to
We're back
them
on track.
living the life they
My
want
bad.
to live and surviving. And until that changes, I will absolutely support what the data show is the best way to encourage trans people.
So what I think you've done here is change the topic. The topic was
I'm pretty sure you said trans before I did.
I did, but I did by analogy. The point I was trying to make was, is there such a thing as male and female? Right?
Really? Is that the point you were trying to make?
It was because
we got
what
to this
you
from
did
somewhere
was
else.
you took the category of male, which actually is a scientific category. It's like life is a scientific.
I made a distinction between male, female, and man, woman.
Right, and then what you did is you introduced a new concept, which I wasn't introducing, of manliness. And I agree, manliness, which is to say the cultural accoutrement of being a man, let's just say, for example, smoking a cigar,
Accoutrement. You don't hear that word often.
or growing a mustache, and hanging out at a club, that is manliness. And I agree that that is a social construct. I would argue it's a social construct by and large in accordance with nature, because culture and society develops in congruence with a given human creature. Okay, so
Nobody's suggesting that the roles
No,
don't
no.
have a historical perspective. I mean,
not historical, biological.
well, sure.
Gender is not an historical concept, it's a biological concept.
When I say historical, I was not denying biology. I'm saying that because of certain biological things, it sets up norms of these are the hunter-gatherers, these are the ones that are going to go out and kill, these are the ones that are nursing children, et cetera else. Those norms are constructs of our head.
Super Senzo says, Travis, why did I pay to watch this live if you're uploading it online for free? Well, because we need to help pay for producing this content. And watching it live, creating a live stream, costs money, but a lot of people want the option to be able to watch it as it's happening. And there's a difference between watching something live in the moment and watching something after the fact. It's the same reason why, eventually you're going to get to see very famous fights. Anything that really goes on pay-per-view, you're going to be able to see it later. So that's the reason. Yeah, did anyone fact check Matt's claim about, trans people being killed left and right because of their orientation? It's a platitude that I've heard many times, but I'm wondering what the actual stats are on that. We can maybe fact check that later, but I'm interested to know what the actual data is.
There's nothing wrong with a stay-at-home dad. There's nothing wrong with a woman working. There's nothing wrong with a woman earning as much as a man makes for doing the same work.
Let's look at what we are arguing about.
Okay.
So in the civil rights laws of the 1960s, we had the principle of color blindness, which is to say equal rights under the law. The law, let's say, should not pay attention to race. I realize this is complex with affirmative act. Let's leave it aside. Let's just say that the basic principle of the civil rights laws is that race is the painted face. I think that was Morris Dees' phrase from the 60s. And therefore, the law should not take it into account. That was the general norm. Now, right away, when sex was added to race in the Civil Rights Act, there was a bit of a problem. which is to say that men and women are very different, particularly in certain areas on average. They're not different in every individual case. So, for example, men are stronger than women. Men are taller than women. Now, you can't refute that by saying, well, here's Sally, she's 6'3", and here's Fred, he's 5'4".
I understand.
Right.
We're talking
because
about...
we're talking about in general.
Yeah, norms.
But the normative
Statistical generalizations.
conclusion from that simple biological fact is we established something that was abhorrent in the area of race. Let's call it separate but equal. Separate but equal was the hated doctrine of segregation, right?
Yeah.
Different water fountains. But we have separate but equal, for example, in men's and women's sports. In Wimbledon, the men play the men, the women play the women. We did that because we recognize that gender is not the same as race. Gender is not the painted face. Men are in fact stronger than women, and they can hit the ball harder on the tennis court, and therefore Martina Navratilova gets to play Chris Evert, and Pete Sampras gets to play Andre Agassi. So our laws, our norms, are based upon this biological, irreducible fact. The norms are a social construct.
Okay, James Wright said MSNBC said at least 26 deaths in 2019. Do we know where they were citing that from? Those were just reported, I guess, to them. And is there information to show whether this was driven by hate for the person's orientation, like, or was there just a feud between people, or like, do we have anything to demonstrate that there actually was a hate towards that transgender person in the bathroom or whatever?
Construct, but they're a social construct, you may say, in obedience to biology. Now, what you're saying is, I take it, that Pete Sampras, or take it, Pete Sampras can say, well, I came in, I was the runner-up in Wimbledon. Next year, I'm going to enter the women's division because I identify as a woman. Because after all, hold on, gender is a social construct. This is ridiculous. This is going on all over the country right now.
Your example is ridiculous.
Why is it ridiculous?
First of all, it's sports, and sports ball is ridiculous. But
what?
No, I'm sorry. That was a joke for somebody else.
Okay.
My sincere apologies, because I should be.
I'm not a devotee of sports, but I'm not.
This isn't about what the law is. My view on sports, by the way, and many sports organizations have already dealt with this sort of thing, dealing with individuals who are transitioning and studying the science of it, of various hormonal levels and things like that. And we're still in the fledgling process of getting this sorted. I think that there shouldn't be any gender restrictions on something. If somebody, we should just have, these are the categories, like a tier A, tier B, tier C, tier D, and you compete at whatever level you can compete at. That way, people who are, whether they're women, men, or neither, whether they're, whatever their identity is, they compete at this level.
Great comment from Sarvish Arkawala here. At Tiago says, when defining life as having molecular movements, viruses are viewed as dead. They can't replicate on their own. That's an important thing when you're thinking about viruses. It's a really good point. They don't replicate on their own. They're not alive in that sense.
I am a big fan. I play a lot of pool and snooker. And the fact of the matter is, if you look at the statistics over history, generally speaking, in that particular discipline, women can't compete as well as the men. That's just what the data show from the past. However, there should be no reason why anyone, whether they are a woman under your criteria or a woman under their own, shouldn't be able to compete against anybody else they want if they can play at that level. And so I don't care for gender divisions along sports. I think sports, because it's a physical test, should be divided up on physical characteristics, irrespective of what gender somebody identifies with or expresses with. To go to the sports thing, the reason I say it's ridiculous is, yeah, we're working out these things, but the world doesn't turn, well, all right, sports makes a lot of money, no denying that. We're talking about the law and how it treats people, and we're also talking about human beings and how we treat people.
Right.
So if you saw me walk into a women's bathroom, what would your reaction be? It's clearly, we're at a restaurant, it's marked women's, and I walk in. What's your take on that?
Well, I don't know what my take on it. I'll give you my wife's take on it.
Well,
You would feel very uncomfortable if you sprang your testicles in a women's bathroom, as would most of the other women
if I
in that bathroom.
sprang my testicles,
Yeah.
I was backstage when Matt responded, "If I sprang my testicles," looking out into the distance. I was like, that is gold. That really needs to be a GIF. If I sprang my testicles.
Most women, I think,
aren't
would
you
be...
assuming I have testicles?
I realize that may be a conjecture. But
By the way, is there any men out there that have sprang their testicles? I don't even know what that means. Like if you're if you're like pissing in a urinal, aren't you flipping your dong out and pissing? Like what is the spraying your testicles saying?
the more important point is most women would be freaked out if a man walked into the women's bathroom while they were there.
Okay.
That's a fact.
Maybe Dinesh has like just huge, gigantic testicles and they have to be sprung. Or he had a really bad experience with someone with just like gorilla testicles.
The thing is, there's a lot of factors that are missing from that example, which is not the least of which my reason is. But do we have any evidence to show that anybody is in danger when a trans person goes into the bathroom that matches their gender identity to use it? Do we have any examples or data anywhere that somebody is more at danger?
Do we have any evidence that trans people who would use their own biological bathroom are being psychologically harmed by doing that? Where's the evidence for that?
So the evidence for that is in the depression rate and suicide rate of people who are being emotionally harmed by not
hold
being
on right
able-
here.
Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. Are they being emotionally harmed by their preconceived idea of how they're going to be treated in this due to like maybe one instance in their life or based on what someone told them, or is it based on actual instances of this happening?
Stop right there. That's not... Okay, this is what I call arguing inside your own bubble. Inside your own bubble, somebody who is biologically male but thinks they're female, right, are not having any kind of inner clash, no inner trauma between physical and psychological realities, let's call them. They are not depressed or traumatized by the very fact that their own body does not agree with them, right? Rather, they're just traumatized by the fact that they have to go into a men's bathroom. I would argue that if there are higher rates of depression suffered by trans people, a lot of it might have to do with being trans, not being in that particular
No, a lot of it
restroom.
might have to do. So I asked for
You need
examples.
studies
No,
that separate those
I
two
want
things.
examples of who's in danger when somebody uses the bathroom associated with their gender, because forcing them to use the other bathroom. And you know when a trans woman walks into a woman's bathroom, you know who's in danger? The trans woman. They're the ones that are being killed. They're the one in Puerto Rico that was shot just the other day for going into that bathroom.
Okay, so here's a big claim. Here are the ones that are being killed. Okay, how many? What are they being killed for? Who killed them? Was it some psychopath who was primed to kill anyway? Like we have to look at these cases to see if this is actually a problem, and I think that's what Dinesh is getting at here. Let's look at the individual examples, because obviously I think we can generally say, a small handful of people this happens to every year. And it's true, that's a small handful too many with any murder. But what is the actual reason for the murder? Are some just startled and they have PTSD from being raped and they're shooting someone who they think is going to harm them based on just a general idea that it might be a man in disguise or something ridiculous like that. Like, we have to look at these cases, especially if it's such a small number. We have to look at these individually to see if this is actually a problem, or that they're being killed for these reasons, or was there an escalation that led to someone feeling like they had to defend themselves, or like what's the actual data here? It'd be something interesting to look at for sure.
They're the ones that are in danger for doing that from bigots.
Well,
okay, so Matt said bigots. Now, again, James Wright says, you can read the article I linked. They can't link them all to hate crime. Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see what proportion of these are hate crime and what aren't. Yeah, I think that's the main thing here. But Matt makes some big claims here.
I don't want to go down this road only because
How many?
only
But
because
no. Well, what's to stop me? Whether I identify as a woman, first of all, if I was dressed as a woman, you wouldn't even know. What? You don't know what my junk is if I go in and open the door and sit down and use it. You don't have no idea, and it shouldn't be anybody's business what's in my pants or what I'm wearing.
Well, quite honestly, if what
we can
you
remove
say is
gender
true,
from the bathrooms entirely.
if what you say is true that people don't know, you wouldn't even need laws, because this is sort of like
The
saying
laws don't do anything to help. There's
No.
nothing stopping me from walking into a woman's
You know
bathroom
what?
and assaulting
But
someone.
see, I think what you're missing here is this. You know, usually when you see a fence, in this case, the fence is the distinction between men's and women's bathrooms, right? And maybe we're overplaying this topic, but what I'm getting at is, if you want to take a fence down, always ask, why was that fence put up in the first place? Who did it, and why?
Not if it's my property. I don't care why they put a fence up.
Fair enough. But the point I'm making here is that we have men's and women's public bathrooms for a reason. And the reason, by and large, is, I would say, mostly for the protection of women. It's not that men...
Yeah, trans women are women.
Okay, but I'm not... Look, what I'm getting at is the sexual... We could have 21 types of bathrooms for 21 genders. We
We
don't.
could just have one. As you can all pee next to me. I don't care.
Yeah, so here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Most women would not want to pee next to Matt. This is the main point. Some of it has to do with, like, noises that are made in the bathroom. Women don't want men to hear that, or even vice versa. And I don't think Matt's getting what Dinesh is getting at. Like, how many mothers out there do you guys know that if they had a daughter and they're taking them into the woman's washroom, and there's both just the mother and daughter in that washroom, and then a man walks in, how many mothers do you know that would feel uncomfortable with that scenario? A lot, right? And what do you think? And what do you think that? And what do you think that reason is? Well, I think some of it might be, okay, men generally, and this is a big generalization, but it's like these isms, racism, sexisms, and things that still exist in general society. Sometimes for reasons of survival reasons in our mind, even though it's not really a survival of the fittest situation. But yeah, there's reasons. There's women generally don't want to be in a stall next to a dude. That's just, and it has to do with I think some embarrassment levels. I think to some degree everyone has some level of embarrassment when it comes to bathroom etiquette or what goes on in the bathroom. I think that's just generally true. And you can point to some examples at, like, festival bathrooms and things like that. Most festivals I've been to have women's stalls and men's stalls, but some are just general bathrooms for sure. Let's get a couple comments here. Jordan Vargas says, the Pangburn, at my local library, they have gender neutral bathrooms, and I ended up hearing some chick come in and pee while I was pooping, and it was weird. Now imagine it happens the other way around. Yeah, well, it's it's just one of those things. It's built into our uh, sociology now that um, we find embarrassment in that stuff, right? And there is a level of like privacy. Like a lot of people want those things to be private to themselves unless they're willing to share those with someone. So and it seems to be generally across the board, women are okay with other women hearing all that stuff or what goes on in the bathroom, and men are okay with other men and say, but once you mix them, it's a little bit different. The viewing of it is a little bit different from the male perspective and the female perspective, and I'm talking just in biological sex terms. Elon Tusk says, I'll drop brown bombs around anyone. Just dropping bombs. drop drop brown bombs and lay out the what's it called? What is the shit military uses where it like burns forever? I can't think of it. Fuck. Oh, like nitroglycerin. uh, Think Sapien says, but people need re-education. What do you mean, Thinking Sapien? Like in what sense? Elon Tusk says, be happy it's not military style. High five the dude pooping beside you.
Yeah. So what you're basically saying is that the distinctions that we make between men and women in our society are culturally, according to you, arbitrary. According to you, for example, take tennis. I'm just using sports because we're familiar with it.
That's okay.
You say people should play at their own level, and therefore, if the top 100 tennis players are all men,
that's the way it
doesn't
is.
bother you the slightest. Basically, the conclusion is men are better than women in tennis.
Although what we would say is maybe the top 100 tennis players all have this particular chromosomal makeup, whether they identify as men or women.
Yes, I see where you're going. Okay.
Hey guys,
If you saw it 20 minutes ago, we could have talked about God some more. But
let's take
No, it's funny.
5 more minutes and then
sure, so we're not going to get to Trump. Let's spend 5 minutes on the future of America and take questions.
Sounds good.
What do you want for the future of America? I'll softball it because maybe, and this is legitimately I don't know, and I'm interested. I am a staunch proponent of the separation of church and state, the separation of religion and government, as my friend would call it. I have no idea. You might completely agree with me.
You're a staunch proponent of the separation of religion and government.
Right.
I would agree to a point. It would depend on what we mean by this. So let's take examples.
Sure.
Do I think that a religious hospital that receives government funds should be forced to do an abortion? No. Do I think that a person of religious convictions has to somehow pocket their religious convictions before stepping in the public square? No. Do I think that Amy Coney Barrett should be disqualified from replacing Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court because she's a devout Catholic? No. So
I agree with parts of most of those.
Okay. So let's point to an area where we might disagree. Where is that wall being breached where you think I'd fall on one side of the divide and you on the other?
So for example, I don't think anybody has to check their religion at the door when they become a public servant. However, if they legislate on behalf of a particular religion showing favoritism towards one over another or a religion over irreligion, that is a huge problem.
Agree completely.
Okay. Now, when it comes to, for example, I love the way you phrased it, a religious hospital being forced to perform an abortion.
St. Luke's or,
Sure.
Catholic hospitals.
The big problem here is that hospitals, from my perspective, should be secular. I love the fact, the only reason that we have religious hospitals and religious universities is because the monumental religious privilege privilege that religions have endured and benefited from throughout history. They're tax-free institutions. They have people donating money to them. And fine, I have no problem with people doing good. Build a hospital, build a university. But if you're going to build a hospital that's going to service an entire community, then the hospital services need to be medically sound and not based on religious doctrine or dogma.
Well, the services of these hospitals are medically sound. What we're talking about is something that they agree. Not all hospitals do
They're
everything.
not.
Hold on. There are children's hospitals that don't take adults.
I get it.
Right. There are cancer hospitals that don't take diabetes patients.
Sure.
If a Catholic hospital were to say, listen, we provide the full ensemble of medical services, we just don't do abortion, they are acting in line with their conscience. This is not to say that abortion is not available in
So
the clinic
here's the thing.
across the street.
The fact
Why
that-
would you?
the fact
Why
that-
would somebody who believes in freedom want to force somebody to act against their conscience?
Because
Would you like it if I did that
Because
to you?
I don't care about your conscience if it's affecting whether or not somebody else can live.
Well, it's not affecting whether someone else can live
But-
because that guy can go across the
If
street.
we have a Jehovah's Witness hospital that refuses to perform blood transfusions, is that okay?
Well, it's okay if you want to go there. I wouldn't go there.
No, so a problem with this is that if they're refusing to perform blood transfusions and there's a huge accident that happens outside the hospital and they need to bring them there and perform these blood transfusions, and you have a hospital that's refusing to do it based on religious grounds, fuck that. It's like, that's not a hospital. That's not a hospital.
I wouldn't either.
Right.
And that's awesome.
And let's just say that the only people
No,
who go there are Jehovah's Witnesses.
I'm thrilled that we're in both.
So you want to
agreement that we
force
would
them
go
now
there.
to do blood transfusions?
No, I'm saying
Okay.
that you don't always have a choice about what hospital you go to or what medical services you go to.
Okay.
This is one of the reasons why we have government and government interaction and government oversight, because if my only medical provider within any reasonable driving distance of me will not provide that, what do I do? This is why the better example is the conscience of the pharmacist. Because first of all, a Catholic hospital may be a hospital that was built.
Elon Tuss says, is there a hospital doing what Matt just claimed? Probably not. I doubt that hospital would stay in business very long. Jordan Vargas says they shouldn't be allowed to call it a hospital if they're on that bullshit. Yeah, so we need to have, if we're going to describe something as a hospital, we need to have certain standards. Blood transfusions, like things that keep people alive. That's why you go to a hospital, to seek care to your well-being that's suffering. So you have to, the bare necessities have to be there. Basically. And that's how all hospitals operate. Basically, they have the bare necessities in order to save people from basically anything that they come in with, if there is a chance to save them. So you got to have that if you're a hospital. Because if someone who doesn't know the inner workings of your particular hospital comes in with someone who's on the verge of death and they didn't realize that, oh, I'm sorry, we don't believe in blood transfusions here. It's like, no, that doesn't work. If it says hospital on the fucking door, you're doing fucking blood transfusions.
Built by Catholics, that was built with Catholic donations, that was built from Catholic donors, but not every doctor there is a Catholic, not every nurse there is a Catholic, not every patient there is a Catholic, so why should they all have to adhere to Catholic doctrine just because they built a hospital? Instead, the government should say, if you want to build a hospital, it needs to provide these services irrespective of your religion, and if your religion can't accommodate that, then you don't get to build a hospital.
I think here you're disrespecting a distinction between the public and the private sphere. In every other domain of life, we have private sector institutions, educational institutions, social work institutions, and those institutions develop policies based upon their mission and their conscience. They decide.
I'm fine with that as long as you don't give government funding. But
False equivalency. So again, going to this topic of schools, it's like this isn't an immediate life or death situation that people are being faced with when they go to a hospital for emergency reasons. This you can try to find an equivalence to this, but it's just not.
As soon as they do,
As soon as
now
they,
it becomes something that is in the public interest.
okay, so let's take Planned Parenthood,
Okay.
right? Planned Parenthood is
With
a
1 minute left, we're
Yeah.
starting on Planned Parenthood.
Well, I
Okay.
was going to say, before you guys touch that,
Yeah, that'll come
why
up.
don't we do a little bit of a vote? Do you guys, and just use your voice, we'll do voting for either to keep the conversation going for the rest of the night or to move to Q&A.
Interesting comment from Thinking Sapien said, but Pangburn people need re-education. And then I asked, re-education on what? And then they went on to say, in the sense that trans activism will tell the girls to get over their shyness. Okay, easier said than done, right? This is shyness is an emotional state, just like a lot of what we would maybe call. Well, I mean, it's an emotional state, emotional reaction to something. Are we even sure that women can, quote unquote, get over this on a general scale across the board? Are we sure that's possible? Just because it might be possible within some small demographics of women, is it realistic to suggest that this can happen across the board? Yeah, and it all comes down to pleasurable pursuits, right? How pleasurable is this to pursue for women in general? Or is it more pleasurable for women in general to pursue being able to have their own bathrooms still for women, biological women?
So let's go Q&A.
Basically,
All
one
right,
guy.
and then if we do keep the conversation rolling, we'll go into Trump. So conversation rolling. Okay, well let's do that.
How much time have we got left?
We got about a half hour.
All right.
We should transition into Trump.
Be careful, because he's promising Trump.
I'm trying to get them to talk about Trump so hard here, and it just doesn't fucking come to fruition. It's got to do another event. I hope to do another event with them in Texas, I think is the general outline of the next plan. So.
And we started with God, and we didn't even finish that. And you had 3 things for God. I'm not even sure we finished one of them.
I think we're going to need a
But
couple
it's
more
okay.
nights
So
with you guys, to be honest.
You wanted to go to
Well-
Planned Parenthood.
Let me, since you mentioned God, let me kind of make a point about that, because I think that's where my 3 points were going.
Okay.
Let's take the question I ended with: is there life after death?
I have no idea.
You have no idea, and
Do you know?
And neither do I.
Cool.
Of course not. But here's my point.
Thinking Sapien with some more comments on this. Yes, if the woman is having an emergency with her pregnancy, every hospital will act as the situation requires. Yes, it should. Thinking Sapien says, Pangburn. Hey, I'm not Prager you. Pangburn, they shouldn't have to get over it, is the point Thinking Sapien wanted to make there. Let's see what else we got. Joseph Dahan says, Thinking Sapien, you are using your personal feelings about something to decide whether it should happen, and who judges what a capricious abortion is. They need a bigger boat. Okay, you guys are getting into abortion there. Cool.
If I say I believe in life after death, you would say that's an irrational position, Dinesh, because
No, I would say, what's the evidence for it?
what's the evidence for it? And I would say, I don't have any evidence for it, and neither do you, but
But I'm not believing it.
right. But it is, and this is the key point, it is in the nature of the subject that no empirical evidence could settle the question, because death is the termination of experience. And therefore, for you to demand evidence in a domain where evidence is unavailable is the height of foolishness.
So when you say death is the termination of experience, it sounds like you're arguing that there is no after death.
I'm arguing that our natural life, I mean, I think the religious believer is fully on board with this, is complete. Our natural life in this world will completely, irrevocably come to an end with death. And so in the empirical world that we live in, yes, there is not going to be evidence, nor will there be evidence in the future, that settles the question of what happens after natural experience ends. And the question about whether there is any, let's remove the Christian context. Look at the Hindu.
So this is a nonsensical question. what happens after death. It's a bad question. It postulates or proposes that there is potentially something. There is not potentially anything after you die, based on our general understanding. As far as we know, brain dead is dead, and the stuff that you were is your brain, and that no longer functions. It's dead. So if someone's going to claim there is something outside that, you have to bring evidence to the table. That's that.
Context. The Hindu context is that there's a life after death, right? It's a natural life, but it's not in this domain. There's a
Yeah, Tiago Rodriguez says, I think saying we have no idea what happens after death is just factually wrong. Yeah, that's like, I don't even know what a good analogy for that is, but yeah, it's just, we do know. After you die, it's over. It's dead. Everything that you were is off. No, cease to be. Just like a squirrel dying, just like a lizard dying, just like all the dinosaurs before us died. There is no evidence that life is anything but what we can measure in reality.
world behind the world, and that natural life will occur there. But we have no access to it because we live in the empirical world that is, according to Hinduism, something of an illusion.
Dinesh, you have to demonstrate that there is some other world out there. You have to demonstrate that outside of the natural empirical world. Hasn't been demonstrated. This is classic religious tap dancing.
Leaving aside the doctrinal parts of it, all I'm getting at is this. Here's a point where you are demanding that I settle the issue on the basis of an empirical evidence that is never forthcoming. And yet, you agreed with me at the beginning, this is one of the questions that all intelligent people think about. It's relevant to their life because the answer to it, even if we don't know it, determines how we should live today. And all I'm trying to get you to admit is that since you don't know any more than I do, it is the same leap of faith that I'm taking to say that there is, that you're taking to say that there isn't, because you don't have 1 ounce of evidence any more than I do. One way or the other.
Give me a round of applause. That's outstanding. Because after an hour and so sitting here and having explained this over and over again, you managed to get my position exactly wrong. Because I'm not.
Matt's not adopting a burden of proof and saying there is no afterlife. Matt's position on the afterlife is it's atheistic, the same approach that it is to God. I'm not closed off to the idea of someone presenting evidence for other things that exist that we don't know yet. But present your damn evidence, or don't believe it. You shouldn't believe things that aren't true justified belief. You shouldn't claim to know things. Yeah. So if Dinesh is saying he doesn't know, I guess that's fine. I don't know what happens after death from an absolute certain standpoint, but I can say almost certainly nothing happens except you're just no longer here. You're gone. Your body's no longer alive.
I'm not asking you to settle it.
Do you believe in life after death?
I do not believe that there is life after death.
Perfect. So your position and
hang
mine...
on.
Okay.
That is not the same as I believe there is no life after death. I'm saying, we both sat here and said we don't know what.
Okay, and I'm saying
you're saying I believe there's something afterwards.
Okay, but you're missing my point.
And I'm saying I don't believe that.
Right, and I'm saying I do, and my position is not in any iota less rational than yours.
What?
Yes,
Dinesh, what has convinced you to believe that there is? A book? Come on, man. It's like, how can someone so intelligent go there? It is the mind virus that religion is. It strangleholds some of the most intelligent people I've ever met and has them say crap like that.
Absolutely.
No, it's not.
Jordan Vargas says, Pangburn, you should watch the Kurzak video about coronavirus on stream right now, so we can talk about it. I don't think we're gonna have time today, guys, but we can do that at some point.
Is because you are accepting something and acknowledging that you have no evidence for it, and I am not accepting that something because there is no evidence. We agree there's no evidence, and you are saying you are rational to accept it despite the absence of evidence, and I'm saying you're not, which is why I don't accept it.
But to demand evidence, in the opening page of the Critique of Pure Reason, Kant says, many of us profess to be apostles of reason, but never once do we step back and ask this question: what is it that reason can actually know? In other words, we live in a world where reason has the ability to arbitrate certain questions, and on other questions, reason is, in a sense, completely deaf. It has nothing to say at all. And
what questions does reason have nothing to say at all?
you admitted, for example, that if you were a Greek in the 5th century BC, your reason, in the empirical sense, would have nothing to say about the world beyond the observational world. Your reason is, in a sense, silent.
I have to go to the 5th century.
Okay, or today. But here's my point.
I accept whatever the data show, and I cannot go beyond that and claim that I'm reasonable.
Okay,
I can go beyond it. You clearly have. But I don't get to claim that I'm reasonable by saying, you and I have no evidence of what happens tomorrow, but I believe this.
Okay, well, let's take a secular example to test this proposition.
Okay.
I take two guys, let's just call them A and B, you and me, and let's just say that I say, I believe that there is life on other planets.
Okay.
You say, to match this, I don't.
No.
Right?
That's.
You say.
What do I say? I don't know. What's the evidence
You
to
say,
support your belief?
Okay, so you say, I don't know if there's life on other planets, and I don't either.
Okay.
And I don't either.
But you believe it. So my next question is, what is the evidence that causes you to believe this?
Okay, so now I might say something like, well, the reason I believe it is we have an unimaginably vast universe. We might even be living in an infinite universe. Life as we know it, we are on one tiny speck of this universe. And life as we know it has developed by various causes, natural causes in the universe. What is the actual likelihood that this event, remotely improbable though it might be, and we can't say what the probability of it is, but let's just say it's 1 in 100 million. But we live in a universe that's vastly bigger than that. Mm-hmm. So what are the odds that this combination of attributes called human beings exists nowhere else in this vast universe? Not just human beings that are like us, but life of any sort at all. What's the probability of that? And let's say I think that that's improbable for the reasons I've just outlined, and therefore I believe it. I don't know it. If you ask me to produce an alien, I can't. But I would argue my belief is in no way irrational. Now, you might say, I'm going to wait until the alien walks on stage, and then I'll believe it. Or because your reason for disbelief may require much higher degrees of certainty than mine are. But I would argue, in me believing it and you not believing it or awaiting the evidence, this is a fake pomposity that comes out of just saying, because I don't know for sure, therefore somehow my belief is more rational than Dinesh's, even though Dinesh has all kinds of good reasons for believing what he does. Of course, if empirical evidence shows up, I'll be as open as you to pay attention to it. But I'm not in some epistemological second-class status because I believe something.
So this is this is a false equivalency to the God proposition. Very different claim that's being made or being talked about. We have examples of life existing, right? So it's a very different claim to say that, sure, there could be other forms of life throughout the cosmos. It's a different claim. It's actually not an extraordinary claim in the same sense that claiming that a God exists outside of space, time, and whatever, an omniscient God, or an afterlife exists. It's like we don't have any examples of afterlives. We don't have any examples of gods actually existing. We have examples of life and vast examples of life on our planet. And so we can look at the probability, and we can say things like make statements and claims like almost certainly there must be or must have been some other form of life somewhere else out there in the cosmos. We can say things like that and be reasonable. But you don't have to necessarily believe that there are. You can say, I believe that there either have been or are other forms of life out there. You can say that and be quite reasonable based on, I believe it's the Drake equation of probability.
Thing for which I have my own reasons, even though there's not empirical proof.
Great. So the example that you gave, first of all, at some point, somebody can go back through this video and find the number of times that he says what my position is likely to be versus how many times I've tried to even attempt what your position is. I actually ask. So if you're just going to set up straw men, it's going to be really easy for me to knock them down.
No, I mean, I'm sorry.
Every time you do that, you say, you could say this. And here's the thing, the examples that you're talking about, we live in this vast universe, what are the likelihoods, what are the odds,
right.
All this stuff. Great questions. And there are things that we can address with data. But the belief that results from that, is not, I believe, the justified belief from that is not, I believe there is life outside of Earth, or intelligent life outside of Earth, we'll stick with that. The warranted belief is, I believe that there's a likelihood consistent with the data of life outside of that. That's different than this is the case, okay?
I agree with that.
Sure, and this is what I'm saying. It's the example that you're giving is fine. The summation is perhaps sloppy in the sense that we're not distinguishing between I believe there's life outside of Earth versus I believe that the data show that there's a likelihood of this, because my response to that is to say, I think that that is a good estimation of the data that we have. And by the way, I think we can go further because we can look at something like the Drake equation, which will evaluate those things about what the probability is, and also considering the likelihood of when technologies get so advanced, are they more likely to destroy themselves or.
Okay, guys, I'm going to end this live stream there. I'm going to go through your comments a little bit here. I want to do one more video on this debate and kind of wrap it up with a more long-form discussion with you guys and take some more calls. Let's see, there was a couple more. Joseph Dahan said he reversed Matt's question. Matt's question, what is the evidence? Dinesh, so you just don't believe because you don't have enough evidence. There is an evidence. Oh, there isn't evidence. Right, there's no evidence of the oh wait, was this about afterlife? Oh no, this was about, yeah. There is no evidence that there is life on other planets anywhere yet, but like things like the Drake equation to calculate the probability of there being some form of life out there, at least at some point, is incredibly high. Cool, guys. Well, I'm really glad those of you who came by. We had a very small audience tonight. We had 160 last time, only 17 this time, but that's okay. We'll probably advertise, do a little bit of advertising for next week's. Please share this link on your social media pages. It really helps the channel. Share it with your friends, those who are interested in having conversations. I really appreciate every time you guys share this stuff around. Yeah, make sure you hit the like button before you leave. I really appreciate that. This has been good. I'm going to be doing more live streams this week. I'm going to pick some debate topics, and you will see them show up. Just like it'll say, abortion, debate me, or stuff like that in the headline. I'll probably be doing it on Wednesday or maybe Friday or something. Or no, we'll say Friday for the watch party, but like Wednesday or Thursday or maybe Tuesday, we'll do some conversations and rapid fire debates like that on certain topics. I'll be keeping an eye on the virus as it inevitably, spreads and rolls off most people's shoulders. Again, follow me on social media at the Pangburn everywhere, including on Instagram. I just started an account. Don't have many people on there, so add me on Instagram. And I'll follow you guys back. Just send me a message and I'll make sure I follow you guys back, especially on Twitter at the Pangburn. I thank you guys a lot for showing up. And again, this has been another one of our watch parties. And as always, let art and science inspire. Good night.